I was just a small-town librarian mourning my mom when my husband, Brent, handed me divorce papers, 3 weeks after she died. He thought he was cashing in on her fortune. But she'd planned for snakes like him all along. Grab a cup of coffee, settle into your favorite spot, and let's share this story together. Before we begin, drop a comment to let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how our stories bring people together from all over. Now relax and enjoy. I always thought grief would hit me like a tidal wave, loud, crushing, unbearable. But when my mom passed away from a sudden stroke, it didn't feel like drowning. It felt like everything around me went quiet, like the world was muffled through cotton. I was still putting one foot in front of the other, but nothing made sense anymore. Mom had been 67, healthy, still working part-time at the local credit union. She made blueberry muffins every Sunday and sent me cat videos even though she didn't like cats, and then one morning she just collapsed on her porch steps. The neighbor found her. I still can't get past that sentence. They found her. If you've ever lost a parent suddenly, you know. It doesn't hit you in one blow. It comes in fragments. The toothbrush still on the sink, the unread book on her nightstand, the voicemail she left 3 days before, still on my phone, still unread. I was still trying to process all of it when Brent started acting. Different. Not bad, not mean, just overly kind. He made dinner 2 nights in a row. Pancakes the first night, then takeout the second. He brought me tea in bed, tucked a blanket around my shoulders while I was going through old photo albums, gave me shoulder rubs without me asking. "I just want to make things easier for you, babe," he said one night, setting my tea down beside me. "You've been through a lot." It should have felt comforting, and it did at first, but something in the way he kept watching me while I looked at the photos, it was like he was waiting for something, measuring my reactions. The night after the funeral, we got back to the house, and Brent turned to me in the hallway. "So, have you heard anything about the will yet?" It caught me off guard. "Excuse me?" I asked, blinking. He gave me this soft, understanding smile. "I just mean, did she leave you anything? You were her only child. I'm sure she wanted to take care of you." I didn't even have the energy to respond. It felt too soon to talk about money, too cold. I think I mumbled something like, "I don't know," and went to bed. The next day, I got the call. It came around 10:12 a.m. I remember because I was standing in the kitchen, still in my pajamas, trying to figure out how to make toast without bursting into tears. "Miss Grant?" the voice said. "This is Thomas Lawton. I'm the estate attorney who handled your mother's financial matters. I'm sorry for your loss. When you're ready, I'd like you to come into my office. There are some things we need to go over in person." In person? I froze. I didn't know what that meant, but something about the way he said it made me set the phone down carefully on the counter and just stare. When I told Brent about the call, he lit up. Not dramatically, not like fireworks. But I noticed it, a flicker of energy behind his eyes. "Sounds serious," he said. "I mean, in person. That has to be something big, right?" I shrugged. "I don't know. She never talked to me about money." He reached over and squeezed my hand. "Well, maybe this is your reset. New chapter. You've worked your butt off for years at that library. Maybe now you can breathe a little." He wasn't wrong. I had worked hard. 10 years shelving books, managing reading groups, covering for absent coworkers, dealing with cranky patrons who thought late fees were a form of persecution. Still, the way he said it, "your reset," made my stomach turn. That night, while I was at Mom's house packing up the last of her things, I found something that made that turn in my stomach feel justified. I was going through the dresser in her bedroom, the bottom drawer where she always kept her journals and old greeting cards. And there it was, a cream-colored envelope, my name on the front, her handwriting. It was sealed. No return address, no note, just 5 words on the flap. "Open this only after the lawyer calls." My throat went dry. I just stood there for a second, clutching the envelope like it might break in my hands. She knew I'd find it. She left it here on purpose. What did she want me to know that couldn't be said until now? I looked around her bedroom, now stripped of life, empty hangers, the faint scent of lavender and old wood. And suddenly, I didn't feel so alone anymore. Mom had something to tell me, and somehow I knew it wasn't going to be simple. That night, I couldn't sleep. The envelope sat on the coffee table in front of me like a dare, still sealed, still in her handwriting. I must have stared at it for over an hour while the rain dripped against the windows. I was afraid to open it, as strange as that sounds, because once I did, it wouldn't just be a letter, it'd be her final words, and I wasn't ready to say goodbye again. But eventually, curiosity won, or maybe instinct. I peeled back the flap slowly, trying not to rip the paper, and unfolded a single sheet. No date, no greeting, just her words, written in that careful, steady hand I'd known all my life. Melissa, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and I know your heart is hurting. I wish I could have stayed longer, but life had its own plans. Please trust Mr. Lawton. Everything I did for you. Love, Mom. That was it. No long explanation, no list of instructions, just quiet, measured words, and that one sentence that stuck like a burr in my brain. Everything I did for you. It didn't feel like a goodbye. It felt like a setup, like something was coming. Hey, a voice said behind me. I jumped. Brent was standing in the hallway, rubbing his eyes, barefoot in flannel pajama pants. What are you doing up? I panicked. Reflexively, I folded the letter in half and slipped it under my leg. Just couldn't sleep. He stepped into the room, eyeing the envelope on the coffee table. Is that from her? I nodded, keeping my hands in my lap. Yeah, she left it in her dresser. He hesitated. What did it say? Not much, I lied. Just sentimental stuff. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded like he didn't quite believe me but didn't want to press. You should try to get some rest. Tomorrow might be a big day. I blinked. What do you mean? You said that lawyer guy wants to see you. Maybe there's something in the will. He said it casually, but I caught the glint in his eye, like he was trying to sound disinterested but couldn't quite pull it off. Right, I said, slowly. Tomorrow. He leaned down, kissed the top of my head, and padded back down the hall. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close before I pulled the letter back out and read it again. Then again. She was trying to tell me something, not just in the words, but in the silence between them. The next morning, I wore my navy blue cardigan, the one Mom always said brought out my eyes. I drove to Mr. Lawton's office on the south side of Des Moines. An old brick building with gold lettering on the door. Lawton Associates, estate planning since 1954. Inside, everything smelled like wood polish and paper. His assistant, a woman named Connie with perfectly ironed slacks and a floral blouse, led me into a quiet office lined with books. Mr. Lawton was kind, tall, silver-haired, a voice like NPR. He stood when I entered and shook my hand warmly. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances, Ms. Grant. Your mother was a remarkable woman. Thank you, I said, settling into the leather chair across from him. He opened a manila folder and adjusted his glasses. I won't waste your time. Your mother left very specific instructions regarding her estate. You are the sole heir. I froze. What? He turned the folder toward me. Inside were neatly organized documents, printouts, and a summary sheet with one number circled in pen. $721,480.63. I stared at it like it might disappear. This can't be right. My mom was careful with money, sure, but she wasn't rich. Mr. Lawton smiled gently. She invested wisely and inherited a small trust from her aunt years ago. She never touched it. She wanted it all to go to you. I leaned back, trying to breathe. My head spun. This wasn't just money. This was freedom, a safety net, a future. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything yet. Take your time. There's no rush to make decisions. I left the office in a fog, clutching the folder to my chest like it was made of glass. Brent was waiting for me on the porch when I got home. "Hey," he said, standing as I walked up the steps. "How'd it go?" I hesitated. "She left everything to me." His eyebrows shot up. "Everything?" I nodded. "Over 700,000. He didn't speak for a second. Then a slow smile crept across his face. "Well, damn," he said. "Your mom really came through for you." For me, I thought. Not for us. He put his hands on my shoulders and leaned in. "You know what this means, right?" I looked at him warily. "What?" He grinned. "It means we can finally breathe. Quit our jobs. Take that vacation we always talked about. Just start over. Together." I stared at him. The rain started falling again, soft and steady. "Tomorrow," he said. "Let's do it. Let's just go." And in that moment, I saw it. The eagerness in his eyes, the hunger behind the smile. He wasn't thinking about grief, or healing, or honoring Mom's memory. He was already spending the money in his head. Beck. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen and stopped cold. There were travel brochures spread all over the table. Hawaii, the Amalfi Coast, a luxury spa retreat in Sedona. A laptop was open. Tabs pulled up for beachfront rentals, business class flights, and something called jet share I'd never even heard of. Brent was at the stove, flipping bacon like he hadn't just planned a global tour overnight. "Morning, sunshine," he said cheerfully. "Hope you're hungry." I sat down slowly, trying to make sense of the scene in front of me. The smell of sizzling bacon and coffee almost masked the sour feeling rising in my gut. He slid a plate in front of me. "Scrambled eggs, your favorite." I didn't touch them. "What is all this?" He grinned and gestured to the table. "Options. We've been stuck in Iowa for too long. I figured we could take a break, recharge, go somewhere warm, somewhere fun." I frowned. "Brent, I just found out about the inheritance yesterday." "Exactly," he said, sliding into the chair across from me. "And what better way to honor your mom's memory than to live a little?" He said it like it made perfect sense, like grief could be cured with cocktails on the beach. I don't think she meant for me to blow it on margaritas and first-class tickets. He leaned back, arms crossed. "Come on, Mel. You've been working yourself to death at that library for years. You've never taken a real vacation. Your mom would have wanted you to be happy." That line, "she would have wanted you to be happy," rubbed me raw. I didn't say anything, just stared at the glossy photos of infinity pools and white sand beaches, and then he kept going. "We should think bigger, like real estate," he said, reaching for his laptop. "There's this new development on the edge of town, luxury townhomes. We get in early, flip it in 2 years, double our money." "Brent," I began, but he cut me off. "We could finally get a new car. That Camry's been on life support for years. What about a Tesla or a Lexus?" "Brent." This time, sharper. He stopped, looked at me like I'd just kicked his puppy. "I haven't even had time to think," I said. "Mom just died." "We haven't even sorted out the estate paperwork. Can we slow down?" He softened his tone, reached for my hand. "Of course, babe. I'm sorry. I just got excited. This could change everything for us." Us. But it wasn't our money. It was mine. And suddenly, that distinction mattered more than I wanted to admit. Later that day, I sat in the bedroom with a spiral-bound notebook in my lap, one of those cheap ones you get in the back-to-school aisle. I opened to the first page and wrote in big block letters, Brent, money behavior. Underneath, I started a list, mentioned vacation plans within 24 hours of finding out about inheritance, talked about new car, Tesla or Lexus, pushed real estate idea, aggressive, eager, said, your mom would have wanted us to enjoy this. Guilt? Keeps referring to it as our money. I didn't know what I was doing exactly, but I needed a record, something to hold on to if this went sideways, and something told me it just might. Jackpot. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I wandered into the living room and sat on the couch with a blanket pulled up to my chin. I started thinking about Mom. How she used to purse her lips whenever Brent talked about business ideas at dinner. How she never fully relaxed around him, even after 6 years of marriage. There was this one time, maybe a year before she died, when Brent had pitched her on some investment scheme, something about a friend's food truck expansion. We were at her house, sitting at the dinner table. Brent had just launched into his speech when I noticed Mom quietly reach for her wine glass and take a long sip. Then she looked at me and said, in that even tone she used when she didn't want to make a scene, Melissa, I hope you're thinking about the long game. I brushed her off, told her Brent had vision, that he was just passionate. She didn't argue. Just gave me a look, the one that made me feel like she was reading between every word he said. Now that look wouldn't leave my mind. The next day, I came home from work early. I was halfway up the steps when I heard Brent's voice coming from the living room. I paused. He was on the phone, low, hushed. I couldn't make out the words at first, but then, yeah, she doesn't suspect anything yet. She's still grieving. This is the perfect time. My heart stopped. I pressed my back against the hallway wall, not daring to move. He paused, then laughed. A quiet, smug little sound I'd never heard from him before. I'll handle it. Just let me work on her. She'll go for it. I didn't hear the rest. I didn't need to. He thought I was a mark, a grieving woman with more money than sense. And in that moment, one thing became crystal clear. Brent wasn't grieving with me. He was planning around me. Checker. It was nearly midnight when I finally slipped out of bed. Brent had fallen asleep on the couch again, claiming he'd dozed off watching the game. But the TV was off when I passed by. No sports, no sound, just him, face lit faintly by the screen of his tablet, which he must have forgotten to lock. I don't know what made me stop. Instinct, maybe. That gut feeling you try to silence until it's screaming. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at him snoring lightly under the blanket, tablet resting on his chest. Then I took it. Quietly. Carefully. I slipped into the bedroom, locked the door, and sat down on the edge of the bed with my heart pounding like a drum. The browser was still open. Google searches. Tabs. Some bookmarked. Others in private mode. Iowa divorce law, community property. What happens to inheritance during divorce? Can a spouse claim half of inherited money? How to file for divorce in Iowa without her knowing. And then there was a notes app file labeled Post Payout Plan. My stomach flipped. I tapped it. Once she gets the cash, we split and I walk with half. Wait until it hits her account. Be nice until then. I couldn't breathe. I read it again. And again, hoping I was hallucinating, that somehow my brain was making this up to punish me for ignoring all the red flags. But it was there, in plain text. No password. No shame. The man I had been with for 8 years, the man who rubbed my back while I cried over my mom's death, was waiting for the money to land before leaving me. Not just leaving me, cashing out. I dropped the tablet and bolted to the bathroom. I barely made it before the sob hit. I sat on the cold tile, back against the tub, hand pressed over my mouth. I couldn't cry loud. I didn't want him to hear. I didn't want him to know I knew. Everything Mom had ever warned me about came crashing into focus. All those subtle looks. Her silence whenever Brent talked about business or investments. The way she once told me, after another one of his failed ventures, "He's not building anything, Melissa. He's waiting to cash in." We fought about that. I remember that night vividly. I'd just defended Brent's latest plan to open a VR escape room in a strip mall. He said the future was immersive, and Mom just stared at me. Quiet, calm, that terrifying calm. "He's not thinking long-term," she said. "He's thinking payout." And I snapped. "You just don't like him," I said. "You've never liked him. You want me to be alone forever." She didn't yell back. She just walked over to the sink, ran some water, and said, "I want you to be with someone who sees you, not someone who's watching the scoreboard." God, how I wish I'd listened. Chapter. I sat in that bathroom for over an hour. Every sound in the house felt sharp. The hum of the fridge, the creak in the hallway floorboards. But I stayed frozen on the tile until I knew for sure Brent was still asleep. I crept back out, returned his tablet to the couch, and walked into the kitchen, where I poured myself a glass of water with shaking hands. The world had tilted. He was going to divorce me, after everything, after Mom, after the funeral, after all those fake "I'm here for you" moments, and he thought I'd never find out. When the sun started to rise, I was already sitting at the table, wide awake, waiting. He shuffled in around 7:15, yawning and scratching his head, saw me and paused. "Morning," he said. I didn't answer. He tilted his head. "You okay?" I just stared at him, and then he said, "Hey, can we talk?" I nodded, slowly. He pulled out the chair across from me, sat down, slid a folder onto the table between us. Manila. Thin. "Look," he said, not making eye contact. "This isn't easy for me." I stared at the folder. "I think we've both known things haven't been right for a while. You've been distant. I've been stressed. And I just think maybe it's time we give each other space to figure things out." I said nothing. "So, I talked to a lawyer." "Of course you did. I think maybe a trial separation is best. At least for now. We don't have to make it ugly. We can just keep it clean. Keep it simple." I reached out and flipped open the folder. Divorce papers. His name typed out neatly at the bottom. My name blank. And at the top of page 3, equitable distribution request. 50% of total marital assets including recent inheritance. That's when I smiled, just slightly, just enough to make him pause, because I knew something he didn't know, yet. It's strange how fast someone can switch from partner to stranger. After Brent handed me the divorce papers, things shifted instantly. No more shoulder rubs, no more "you okay, babe," no more pancakes in the morning. It was like a curtain dropped between us. And suddenly, I wasn't his wife. I was a problem he had to manage. We barely spoke the rest of the day. That evening, I heard him dragging a suitcase into the guest room. No conversation, no explanation, just the squeak of the door closing and the quiet click of the lock. The silence in the house was louder than any fight we'd ever had. The next morning, Brent sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee like nothing had happened. I walked past him to grab a glass of water. I could feel his eyes on me. "You're really not going to say anything?" he asked finally. I turned slowly. "Say what?" He set his mug down, a little harder than necessary. "About what I said yesterday. About the divorce." "I thought you said you didn't want to make it ugly," I replied, my voice flat. He sighed, This isn't about the money, Mel. You've just changed. Since your mom died. You're closed off. Cold. I'm trying, but I can't keep living like this. I stared at him, stunned. I've changed. Brent, my mom just died. Of course I'm not myself. He leaned back and crossed his arms. Grief doesn't give you a pass to treat me like a stranger. There it was. The spin, the gaslight, the reframe. He had initiated a divorce. He had tried to manipulate me into spending my inheritance. But now I was the one being distant. I didn't say another word. I just walked out the door. Later that afternoon, I called Lila, my best friend since college, the kind of friend who would drive 4 hours in a snowstorm if I needed her. She answered on the first ring. You sound weird. What's going on? I told her everything. The searches on Brent's tablet, the draft message, the divorce folder. There was a long pause. Then she said, That snake. That absolute piece of… Lila. No. I knew something was off with him. Remember when he tried to pitch that golf app idea at our dinner party? Golf Finder? And then asked your mom to invest while we were eating cheesecake? I let out a weak laugh. Yeah. He's been circling you like a vulture since the day he met you, Mel. And now he sees dollar signs. Her words landed hard, because I knew they were true. I just never wanted to admit it. Back at home, Brent was in full performance mode. He cooked himself dinner, cleaned up after himself, loudly, like I was supposed to be impressed. He even left his phone on the kitchen counter screen up, like he wanted me to see how not shady he was. But the real kicker? He started talking like the divorce was a mutual decision. When we tell people, I think we should keep it neutral, he said casually over dinner. No blame, just a we grew apart kind of thing. It's cleaner that way. I blinked. We didn't decide anything, Brent. You did. He gave me that fake hurt expression. I just want us to handle this like adults. No drama. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I excused myself, went into my bedroom, and pulled out the folder Mr. Lawton had given me, the one with the estate paperwork. There were more documents I hadn't had the strength to read yet. The will, the trust agreement, notes. Mom had left with the lawyer. Something about that letter she wrote me still nagged at me. Please trust Mr. Lawton. Everything I did for you. The next morning, I scheduled an appointment. I needed answers. I needed to know what my mother had really planned. And if Brent had any legal footing to touch that inheritance. Mr. Lawton's office was quiet, as always. He greeted me with a soft smile and ushered me into the same book-lined room. I'm glad you came in, he said, folding his hands on his desk. I was hoping you would. I told him what was happening. Brent's sudden shift, the divorce, his assumption that he was entitled to half. Mr. Lawton didn't look surprised. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. There's something your mother asked me to show you, only if your marriage came under legal stress. Her words. He slid the folder across the desk toward me. My heart pounded as I opened it. Inside, there were additional clauses, ones not included in the summary I'd seen before. He pointed to a paragraph highlighted in yellow. It read, If my daughter Melissa is married at the time of my death, she will not receive direct access to the estate unless and until she is legally divorced. Under no circumstances may a spouse or third-party access or benefit from my estate. I froze. Mom had seen this coming. Mr. Lawton leaned back. Your mother worked with a trust attorney to make sure Brent, or anyone like him, couldn't touch a penny. She suspected he'd try something. I sat there, stunned, my fingers trembling. She built a wall around you, he added gently, even after death. If this story touches you, drop a number 1 in the comments. Every one reminds us that these stories matter. and it gives us the motivation to keep sharing them with you. The air in Mr. Lawton's office felt thicker that day. Heavy, like it carried the weight of things that had been waiting too long to be said. The wood-paneled walls, the soft ticking of the antique clock behind his desk, everything in that room felt still, like the past had been preserved in it. Mr. Lawton handed me the second folder without saying a word. This wasn't the one with balances and account summaries. This one was thicker, more personal. He slid it toward me and said, "Your mother added this clause herself. It wasn't part of the standard package." I opened it slowly, my fingers trembling. Highlighted in neat yellow ink, Mom's favorite color, was the section he'd referred to earlier, but now I was reading it for myself, and it felt like reading a secret she'd never had the heart to say out loud. If my daughter Melissa is married at the time of my death, she will not receive direct access to the estate unless and until she is legally divorced. Under no circumstances may a spouse or third-party access or benefit from my estate. Should these conditions not be met within 12 months of my passing, the full balance will be donated to the Women's Heart Health Foundation. I blinked, reading it again. Then again. She locked it down. She didn't just leave me the money. She built a fortress around it. Around me. Mr. Lawton folded his hands. She made it legally airtight. I reviewed it myself, then had a trust attorney go over every detail. There are no loopholes. My throat tightened. She really thought he'd try to take it. She didn't say it directly, he replied. But in the months before she passed, she made several updates. One of them was this clause. I stared down at the document, the yellow highlight almost glowing against the paper. My mother, even in death, had made her stance clear. Brent wasn't just a mistake I had to live with. He was a danger she'd been trying to protect me from. And now I was standing at the center of the trap she had laid out. Not for me, but for him. When I got home that evening, Brent was in the garage, pretending to organize tools he hadn't touched in months. I didn't say anything. I just walked straight past him, back inside, and up the stairs to our shared home office. Something had been nagging at me ever since Mr. Lawton showed me that clause, a detail I couldn't shake. If Brent had known about any of this, if he'd even suspected that my mom had protected the money, why would he be moving so fast? Why file divorce papers at all? Unless he thought he could get to it before I did. That's when I remembered something. About a week after the funeral, Brent had spent the whole afternoon in this office, claimed he was filing insurance stuff and canceling utilities from Mom's house. But he wouldn't let me in. Said he needed focus. The drawer on the left side of the desk was locked. Always had been. But Brent wasn't exactly subtle. He kept the key taped to the underside of the keyboard tray like some kind of discount spy. I peeled it off and opened the drawer. Inside were a bunch of manila folders, business cards, and receipts. But tucked between them was a single white envelope with my name typed on it. Typed, not handwritten. I opened it carefully. Inside were 3 documents. The first, a credit card application. In my name, but with an address I didn't recognize. The signature didn't look quite right. Not completely wrong, but not mine either. The second, a pre-approval letter for a personal loan, again in my name, with Brent listed as a co-signer. The third, a property contract draft, a small investment condo in Cedar Rapids. Listed buyer, Melissa Grant and Brent Adams. Estimated value, $310,000. I felt my knees go weak. He wasn't just waiting for the money. He was already trying to spend it, without my knowledge, using my name, and probably planning to walk away after it was done. I sat there in that chair, heart pounding, staring at my name on paper after paper, like I didn't even own my identity anymore. He thought I wouldn't look, thought I'd be too wrapped up in grief to notice. But Mom knew. She'd seen this coming long before I had. And while I was trying to protect my marriage, she'd been protecting me. I clutched the papers, every cell in my body buzzing with adrenaline. I didn't know what I'd do next, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just divorce anymore. This was fraud. The next morning, I sat in the home office with the door closed, papers fanned out in front of me like a crime scene, because that's exactly what it felt like. A crime. My name was on documents I'd never seen before. Contracts, credit card statements, loan applications, all with my signature at the bottom. Except, I didn't sign any of them. One in particular stopped me cold. A personal loan application. Approved. $25,000. Tied to a home renovation project. The lender? A mid-sized bank in West Des Moines. The contact name? Someone named Matt Underwood, a contractor I'd never met. I flipped through the pages, trying to catch my breath. Attached to the loan paperwork were work orders, kitchen upgrades, bathroom fixtures, outdoor deck plans. It was real. It was active. And it had been approved 2 weeks ago, right around the time Brent started suggesting we make some improvements to increase our home's value. He never said he already started. I went completely still. You know that moment when your body realizes what's happening before your mind does? That cold, electric wave that starts in your chest and shoots down your spine? That's what hit me then. He'd gone behind my back, faked my name, opened a loan, and was now spending money tied to my credit, my name, on a project I never agreed to. The rage that followed wasn't loud. It was focused. I opened my laptop. If he was forging my signature and opening accounts under my name, there had to be more. I logged into my credit report, and there it was. A credit card I didn't recognize, opened 3 months ago. Credit limit, $15,000. Current balance, $6,170, $32. The purchases made me sick. Luxury furniture. A new TV. Charges from high-end design stores and appliance centers. He'd been stocking up, probably thinking he'd redecorate before flipping the house after the divorce, with my name attached to every transaction, and I was just now catching up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just grabbed my phone and found a local fraud attorney with strong reviews and a short wait list. When I called, I could barely get the words out. Hi, I think someone stole my identity. My husband. He forged my name on a loan, opened a credit card in my name, and I just found out. The receptionist didn't sound shocked, just calm. Like this wasn't the first time someone like me had called. She scheduled me a meeting for the next day. Bring all documentation, she said. And don't tell him anything yet. The moment he knows you're onto him, he'll shift his strategy. That sentence hit hard. Shift his strategy. Brent wasn't just lying. He was playing a long game. And now I had to play one too. That night, I cooked dinner like nothing was wrong. Spaghetti, salad, garlic bread. It felt surreal, feeding the man who was actively gutting my life behind my back. Brent came in, grinning. "Smells amazing," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. I flinched just slightly. He didn't notice. He poured himself a glass of wine and sat at the counter. "I've been thinking," he said, twirling pasta on his fork. "We should trade in the Camry. Finally, it's been giving you problems, right?" I didn't answer. He kept going. "I saw this Audi at the dealership near my office. Black, leather interior, sunroof, classy. You'd look great in it." I raised an eyebrow. "An Audi?" He nodded, swallowing a bite. "It's not crazy. With our financial situation now, we could afford a couple upgrades. It's an investment in our quality of life." Our financial situation. We could afford it. My name, My mom's money. His fantasy. "What's it cost?" I asked, playing along. He grinned. "They're running a special 48 grand. But I could probably talk them down. Told the guy I'd come back tomorrow." I stared at him. "You already went to the dealership?" He shrugged, like it was no big deal. "Test drive. That's all. He said financing would be easy with our credit. Yours is spotless." Mine. I nearly choked on my salad. He was planning to use my credit again. Probably already had a plan in place. And he thought I'd just go along with it. That I wouldn't notice. That I wouldn't care. But I was done playing nice. After he went to bed, I gathered every piece of evidence and packed it in a locked folder, one I would take with me to the attorney the next day. This wasn't just emotional betrayal anymore. It was criminal. He faked my name, stole my credit, and now he was trying to walk away with everything my mom spent her life saving. Check. You ever had to smile while someone lied to your face? And pretend you didn't already know the truth? It's a special kind of self-control, like sitting across from a poker player who thinks they're bluffing you out of the game while you're holding 4 aces in your lap. That was me, Friday morning at Hartley Auto Group, letting Brent play salesman to me and the wide-eyed 20-something behind the desk. "Yeah, she deserves the best," Brent said, patting my shoulder like a used car Santa Claus. "She's been driving that Camry since college. Time for an upgrade, don't you think?" The salesman, Kyle or Craig or something with a K, nodded eagerly. "We've got some beautiful options on the lot. The A7 is loaded. Navigation, all-leather interior, panoramic sunroof." I smiled politely. "Sounds nice." Inside, my stomach was turning. We were sitting in a glass-walled office with a bowl of mints on the desk and an espresso machine humming in the corner. Brent was glowing. He thought I was buying this. What he didn't know was that 5 minutes earlier, while he was admiring a chrome grille, I had slipped into the ladies' room, pulled out the loan documents from my purse, and snapped a clean set of photos. Every forged signature, every fake application, every page with my name on it that I never signed. I texted them to my attorney. Subject: urgent. Additional fraud evidence. Message: he's trying to use my credit again. Dealership visit now. Playing along. Let's talk Monday. Then I deleted the texts from my phone. Just in case. "Want to take her for a spin?" Brent asked, nudging me. I shook my head. "I'm good. Honestly, I'm not sure I'm ready to do this yet." Brent's smile faltered just a little. "Babe, it's just a test drive." "I know," I said sweetly. "I just want to be sure it's the right fit. We're making big decisions lately. I don't want to rush." The salesman offered me a clipboard with a pen. "Shh, no pressure, but we'd need a soft credit check to reserve today's pricing." Brent looked at me like, "Go on." But I smiled and said, "Actually, I left my ID at home. Rain check?" Kyle's face fell. Brent's eyes tightened, and I knew without saying a word that I had just thrown a wrench in his timeline. Outside in the parking lot, Brent's phone buzzed. "Give me a second," he said. I watched him step away toward the sidewalk. He had that hushed tone again, the one he always used when he didn't want me to hear. I walked slowly toward the car, giving him space while pretending to scroll through Instagram. But I wasn't scrolling. I was recording. I tapped my phone's voice recorder and held it low, just out of sight. "No, she didn't sign anything," Brent was saying. "She's dragging her feet. I'll get her there next time. She's soft when it comes to conflict." Pause. "No, I haven't told her about the investment yet." "I need the car thing to go through first. Get that locked in." Investment? I turned slightly. He was facing away from me. He hadn't noticed I was still within earshot. "Yeah, I'll bring her by Monday. Just keep the papers ready. She won't ask questions. She never does." I ended the recording. My hands were shaking, but I felt calm. Cold, even. He was lining me up for a second scam. We got in the car. Brent was quiet for a minute. Then he said, "Hey, I want you to meet someone this weekend." "Oh?" I kept my tone light. "Yeah, his name's Kyle. Real estate guy. Works with investment flips. Super smart. He's helping me scout a few properties. Thought you could come along, just to check things out." My pulse spiked. "Properties?" "Yeah. Don't worry. You don't have to commit or anything. Just look. I trust this guy. He's solid." There it was. He was planning to funnel my inheritance into some backdoor deal, likely with forged documents and my name tacked on somewhere down the line. And now he was trying to ease me into it, like it was no big deal, like I was some clueless wife along for the ride. That night, after he went to bed, I stared at the ceiling in the dark. So many things I wanted to scream. But I wouldn't scream. I'd plan. At 1:42 a.m., I pulled up Erin's contact, Brent's older sister, banker, straight shooter. She and I had always been polite, but not exactly close. Still, I remembered the look on her face at the funeral when Brent was joking about flipping Mom's house, like she'd seen this side of him before. I typed, "Hey, Erin, it's Melissa. I know this is out of nowhere, but can I ask you something? And can you keep it between us?" I waited. A minute passed. Then 2. Then, "Of course. What's going on?" "Chepke." We met at a little coffee shop tucked between an antique bookstore and a bike repair shop in downtown Des Moines. One of those quiet places where the baristas wear beanies year-round and the espresso machine hisses like it's alive. Erin walked in wearing her usual blazer and no-nonsense expression, purse slung over her shoulder, phone in one hand. She looked like she was on her way to testify in court, which, ironically, wasn't far from what was happening. I stood to greet her, nervous, unsure. This wasn't a casual catch-up. This was war prep. "Hey," she said, sliding into the booth. "I came straight from work. Didn't tell Brent anything." "Thank you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She set her phone down and looked at me hard. "All right. What's going on?" I told her everything. The forged loan, the secret credit card, the attempted car purchase, the real estate deal, the fake divorce, negotiation, the fake everything. Erin didn't blink once. And when I finished, she just sat back, arms crossed. Well, I wish I could say I'm shocked. I stared at her. "You knew?" "I didn't know," she said. "But I suspected. Brent's pulled shady moves before. Not like this. Not full-on fraud, but enough that I started keeping my distance." She opened her purse and pulled out a folder. Not thick, but deliberate, like she'd come prepared. She slid it across the table to me. Inside were printouts, bank transactions, flagged account activity, and 2 grainy still images from a security camera at a branch office. Brent, standing at the teller window, depositing a check into an account under my name. "I recognized the account name," Erin said. "It was opened 6 weeks ago. He told me it was a joint account you'd both agreed to set up for a real estate deal, something about streamlining the paperwork." She leaned in. "Melissa, he forged your ID. Probably used your social security number too. I'm not supposed to be showing you these, but I can't stay silent. Not anymore." The wave of nausea that hit me was immediate. "I thought maybe he was just pushing boundaries," I whispered. "But this is criminal." "It's worse than you think," she said. "Last week, he asked me about transferring a large sum internationally. Said he had a friend with a foreign investment opportunity. But when I looked at the accounts, none of them were in his name. They were in yours. Or joint accounts with your name listed first." My blood ran cold. He's trying to liquidate. Aaron nodded. Which means you need to move fast. If he drains that money and moves it through enough layers, it could be gone before you even file a report. I gripped the edge of the table. I have a meeting with my fraud attorney tomorrow. I've already sent her documents. But this changes the entire picture. Aaron reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I always thought you deserved better, Mel, she said softly. I'm sorry I didn't say it sooner. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized something I hadn't felt in weeks: relief. Someone believed me, someone saw what I was dealing with, and someone wasn't going to let him get away with it. We spent the next hour going over every account Brent had access to. Erin pulled up bank summaries on her secure work tablet while I matched each one to a file in my growing folder of evidence. Together, we created a list of transactions to flag. Then we drafted an action plan. I'd visit the attorney first thing in the morning with all updated evidence. Erin would submit a quiet internal inquiry to freeze the flagged accounts under suspicion of fraud. I'd start recording everything: conversations, texts, phone calls, and we'd prepare a formal affidavit from Aaron to support my legal case. This isn't just about stopping him, I said. It's about making sure he never does this to anyone else. Aaron's face hardened. He's always been charming until he doesn't get what he wants. Then the mask comes off. I nodded. I'd seen that mask fall, and I wasn't going to forget the face underneath. We walked out of the coffee shop together, the sun already setting. The city buzzed softly around us, but I felt clearer than I had in weeks. Erin turned to me before we parted ways. Just be careful, she said. Brent's not stupid. He'll know something's off soon. And when he does, he's going to get desperate. I nodded. Let him. He's underestimating the wrong woman. She smiled. Then let's burn his little house of cards down. Dinner was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that hums just beneath your skin, where every clink of silverware feels like a warning. Brent sat across from me at the dining table, cutting his chicken with slow, smug precision. I'd made roasted garlic thighs and mashed potatoes, more for the illusion of normalcy than anything else. He was enjoying himself, not the food, the control. Good dinner, he said, wiping his mouth like a king finishing a feast. You always do the comfort stuff right. Thanks, I said, forcing a smile. Figured we could use something simple. He nodded, took a long sip of his wine, then leaned back and gave me that look. The one that used to make me nervous when we first started dating. Cocky, calculated, like he knew something I didn't. You know, he said casually, I talked to my guy again this morning. I paused. Your guy? My lawyer, he clarified, as if I should have already known. He's putting together the paperwork. Think we'll file officially next week. No point dragging this out, right? I stabbed a piece of chicken, held it on my fork. Right, he kept going. Honestly, we're both being adults here. No screaming matches, no drama. That's rare. And if we split things evenly, it'll go smooth. No need for anyone to get nasty. I nodded. Sounds fair? He smiled, clearly pleased with himself. But inside, my blood was ice. He thought he had me cornered, thought I'd roll over, give him his half, and disappear while he drove around in an Audi financed on my name, sipping cocktails in some investment condo I didn't know existed. He didn't know that everything he just said, I'd recorded it, and that was just the beginning. After dinner, Brent disappeared into the guest room and shut the door. His new routine. He called it winding down, but I knew better. I waited 20 minutes. Then I knocked. No answer. I cracked the door open. The room was dark except for the glow of his laptop, left open on the desk. Brent was out cold on the bed, snoring softly, half wrapped in a blanket. I slipped in silently and sat down at the desk. No password. Typical. He probably didn't think I was capable of finding anything, even if I tried. I opened his email first. The most recent thread caught my eye immediately. Subject line: Cedar Bluffs deal, final steps. Inside, a contract for a property listed at $385,000. A note from someone named Kyle, the same Kyle from the dealership. If she signs by Friday, we're golden. I'll push the paperwork through fast. Keep her calm until then. Below that, a second thread. Las Vegas itinerary. Confirmed. I opened it. Round trip ticket. Brent Adams. Departure. Next Thursday. Hotel. The Bellagio. Room type. Penthouse suite. 2 guests. 2. My stomach twisted. There was a second reservation confirmation for a restaurant, a private chef's table at some exclusive place I'd never heard of, the kind you book months in advance unless you know someone. I clicked through more emails, more real estate chatter, a title company invoice. Legal correspondence between him and his guy. Everything in motion. Everything planned. And I wasn't in a single conversation. I slipped out of the room and back into my office, where my folders were stacked neatly by the printer. I pulled out my phone and began forwarding every incriminating email to my attorney, one by one. Subject: Full thread, real estate fraud plus Vegas plans. See attached. Then I opened a secure reporting portal for the fraud unit at Aaron's bank and uploaded the documentation. Account numbers, deposit history, timestamps, email records. They wanted receipts. I was handing them an entire ledger. I sat there afterward, breathing slowly, calmly. The air was different now, colder, sharper, because now I had the power. He was no longer a mystery. He was a pattern, and patterns can be stopped. He thought I didn't see him, that I didn't understand the game he was playing. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It buys you time, and I was done wasting mine. You never forget the sound of a courtroom door shutting behind you. It echoes, like a final warning. I stepped in that morning wearing the soft blue blazer my mom had bought me for my first job interview. I figured if I was going to face down the man who tried to destroy me, I should bring a piece of her with me. Brent was already seated, flanked by his attorney, a smug guy with cufflinks and a smile I didn't trust. Brent, of course, looked completely relaxed, tan, confident, like he thought this was just a formality before payday. "Ms. Grant," the judge said, nodding as I took my place beside my attorney, Rachel, calm, composed, fierce. I liked her the moment I met her. We began with the basics. Length of marriage, no children, no shared property except the modest home we both wanted to be rid of. Then Brent's lawyer stood up, all polished charm. "Your Honor, my client is requesting an equitable distribution of assets and ongoing alimony to maintain the lifestyle to which he has become accustomed." Brent didn't even look at me. He just leaned back and crossed his arms. "And what lifestyle is that, exactly?" the judge asked. He was a co-participant in household decisions, supported his wife during her recent inheritance, and jointly envisioned a future investment strategy, the lawyer recited. I almost laughed, but Rachel simply stood. "Your Honor," she said, placing a stack of documents on the judge's bench. "Before any decisions are made, we believe there are relevant materials that may impact the court's understanding of Mr. Adams's intentions." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "Exhibit A," Rachel said, holding up a forged loan application, "is a loan Mr. Adams opened under Ms. Grant's name without her consent. The signature was falsified. We have a handwriting analyst on record." The courtroom shifted. Brent blinked. "Exhibit B," she continued, flipping to the next document. "A second credit card registered under Ms. Grant's Social Security number. Again, unauthorized." Brent finally spoke. "That's not— I was going to tell her." Rachel didn't flinch. "Exhibit C. Emails recovered from Mr. Adams's personal computer, detailing real estate purchases, luxury expenditures, and travel arrangements made in anticipation of accessing Ms. Grant's inheritance. Brent looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. And finally, Rachel said, Exhibit D is a copy of the will. Specifically, the clause written by Mrs. Grant's mother, stipulating that the inheritance, valued at over $700,000, would not be released if Mrs. Grant remained married at the time of her mother's death. A silence fell, thick, heavy. Your Honor, Rachel said evenly, Mr. Adams stood to gain nothing from this divorce. He stood to gain everything if he appeared supportive, then filed swiftly. Brent stood. This is character assassination. She's turning this into a circus. The judge held up a hand. Mr. Adams, sit down. He did, slowly, but the panic was written all over his face. Given these materials, the judge said, flipping through the documents, I am ordering a formal investigation into financial fraud and identity theft. The divorce proceedings will continue, but all assets will be held until this is resolved. Brent looked to his lawyer, who suddenly wasn't so smug. We stood. The judge exited. Rachel turned to me and whispered, Checkmate. As we walked out into the hallway, the bailiff stepped forward with a sealed envelope in hand. Brent Adams, he said. Brent turned. You've been served. Criminal fraud charges. You'll need to appear in court within 10 days. The color drained from Brent's face. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. I didn't say a word. I just walked past him. For the first time in this entire nightmare, I wasn't the one feeling small. They say karma doesn't need an invitation. It just shows up. And when it arrived for Brent, it came with hand-delivered paperwork and a police escort. It started with a call from his office the morning after our court hearing. He'd gone in looking smug, like he was still running the show. But by noon, he was escorted out of the building. Apparently, his employer had received a formal notice about the fraud investigation. The moment they caught wind that he'd used forged signatures and fake loan accounts tied to their financial platform, they had no choice. He was suspended indefinitely, pending review. I was sipping chamomile tea when I got the news. I didn't smile, not yet, but I set the mug down and looked out the window at the dogwood tree Mom and I had planted 5 years ago. The leaves were just starting to bloom. Everything was starting to bloom. By mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed with a name I didn't expect. Kyle. We should talk, the message read. I didn't sign up for jail time because Brent's an idiot. Call me. Kyle, the same smug real estate partner Brent had introduced me to like I was a silent investor. I didn't call him, but I forwarded the message to my attorney, just in case. Apparently, Kyle had begun cooperating with the investigators. He'd sent over emails, text logs, and financial records showing Brent had misrepresented his access to the inheritance money. Brent had told him I was on board with everything. He had no idea Kyle was documenting everything to cover his own tracks. One by one, the bricks Brent built his little empire on started falling. I had a meeting with Mr. Lawton later that week. He looked 10 years younger than he had the last time I saw him. I guess watching justice begin to unfold does that to a man. The forensic accountant's report is coming along faster than expected, he told me, tapping his pen against a thick manila folder. We've already identified 3 major discrepancies in Brent's financial statements. If I were him, I'd be lawyering up harder. I sat quietly for a moment before asking the question that had been living in the back of my throat for weeks. Can he touch anything? The trust? The accounts? Mr. Lawton leaned back. Not a cent? And after what we've uncovered, he may owe you restitution. I walked out of the office that day lighter. My heels didn't click as loudly against the linoleum. My breath felt fuller. I even picked up takeout from my favorite Thai place on the way home. Brent never liked Thai food, so I hadn't had it in years. At home, I sat in the quiet, just me and the smell of basil and lemongrass, and started thinking about what came next. The bookstore idea that had been a daydream before. I pulled out my old sketch pad and started doodling logo ideas. A cozy reading nook, a mural for kids, maybe name it after Mom. Lydia's pages had a nice ring to it. I opened a fresh journal page and wrote at the top, Life after Brent. I wasn't grieving the marriage anymore. I was grieving the woman I used to be, the one who second-guessed her gut, who begged for scraps of affection, who mistook manipulation for love. That woman was fading. In her place stood someone far stronger. Then my phone buzzed again. Brent. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the decline button. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. Melissa, he said. His voice was hoarse, almost like he'd been crying. What do you want, Brent? Can we talk? Just once. Please, before it's too late. Too late for what? I thought. Why? Because everything's falling apart, and I need you to understand. Understand? After everything he'd done. I'll think about it, I said, and then I hung up. But as I sat there in my warm, quiet home, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't the one on borrowed time anymore. It was raining when I met Brent at the cafe, the kind of soft, steady drizzle that made everything feel heavier than it was. I chose the seat near the window, watching water trace lines down the glass while I waited. He was already there when I walked in. Nervous, fidgety, pretending to scroll on his phone but glancing up every few seconds. His shoulders dropped when he saw me. I didn't say hello. I just pulled out the chair and sat across from him. Thanks for coming, he said, voice low. I nodded once. No warmth, no invitation to small talk. He started with a sigh, the kind that sounded rehearsed. I messed up, Melissa. I know that now. I tilted my head slightly. Let him keep going. I was scared, he said, eyes flicking down to his untouched cup of coffee. Everything happened so fast. Your mom dying, the inheritance. I didn't know how to handle it. I stayed silent. I thought you'd leave me once you had money. Like, you wouldn't need me anymore. And I panicked. That's when I realized what this was. Not an apology, a strategy. He was testing a different approach. Less smug, more sad. Playing the victim, the confused husband, the one who just didn't know how to process emotions. I know I acted selfish, he continued. But the truth is, I still love you, Mel. I never stopped. The money just got in your head, I finished for him. Turned everything upside down. He nodded quickly, seizing on my words like they were forgiveness. Yes, exactly. But I'm still me. I'm still the man who lied to me, forged my name, tried to take what wasn't his. That man? He flinched. Melissa, please. The tone in his voice cracked, like he was trying to cry without tears. Maybe he thought that would move me. Maybe he still believed there was some version of me who'd fall for this performance, but that version was gone. All I could think about was Mom's voice from years ago after one of our many silent dinners with Brent. The man you marry should protect your peace, she said, handing me a cup of tea. Not profit from your pain. I didn't understand her then. I do now. Brent, I said slowly, deliberately, this conversation is being recorded. His face froze. What? I'm recording this. I tapped my phone, which sat face down on the table. For legal reasons, so you can keep talking, but know that every word is being documented. He leaned back in his chair, visibly rattled. His charm vanished in an instant. That's low, Melissa. No, I said, meeting his eyes. What's low is exploiting someone's grief, manipulating your wife while she's still mourning her mother. That's low. He clenched his jaw, fists tightening around the edge of the table. I thought maybe we could fix this, he muttered. Maybe there was still something worth saving. There is, I said, standing slowly and picking up my phone. Me. I didn't look back as I walked out. The rain had let up, just enough to make the sidewalks shimmer. I pulled my coat tighter around me and took a deep breath. For the first time, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. I didn't feel guilt, or regret, or fear. Only clarity. There's a particular kind of peace that comes when you finally stop asking questions you already know the answers to. When someone shows you who they are, not once, but again and again, and you finally believe them. Brent had shown me. And now, the performance was over. I didn't go to Brent's family barbecue. I wasn't invited, of course. Not that I would have shown up if I had been. The days of pretending everything was okay were long gone. Instead, I spent the afternoon curled up on the couch with a mystery novel, some kettle corn, and zero regrets. It was Erin, his sister, who kept me updated. She texted me from the backyard, where everyone was drinking beer under string lights and pretending like the Addams family reputation wasn't circling the drain. "He's trying to spin the story," she wrote. "Said you went cold and greedy after the inheritance, that you're punishing him for trying to build a future." I almost choked on a piece of popcorn. She followed it up with a selfie, her smirking with a thumb down in front of the grill. "Don't worry," she added. "Nobody's buying it. Uncle Rick straight up told him he sounded like a con artist." I laughed. Out loud. The sound surprised me. I couldn't remember the last time I laughed without it catching in my throat. It felt good. Apparently, Brent tried to recite some sob story about how he never saw a dime of the inheritance and how I twisted things in court. But what he hadn't realized was that Erin had already been sharing her side with the family, including screenshots, bank documents, and yes, the Vegas trip itinerary. By the time Brent got to his third lie, people were walking away mid-sentence. His cousin Rachel even said, "Maybe don't mess with someone whose mom left a paper trail." Ouch. Justice sometimes is slow. Other times, it shows up in the form of barbecue chicken and family gossip. Later that evening, I met with Rachel, my lawyer, not his cousin, at her office downtown. She looked like she hadn't slept much, but in a good way. That intense kind of tired that comes from digging into the truth and knowing you've found something big. She dropped a new stack of papers on the desk between us. 3 more hidden accounts, she said. All opened in Brent's name within the last 6 months. 2 of them had deposit activity traced back to one of the forged loans. I didn't even flinch. At this point, I was numb to the surprise of it all. The shock had worn off. Now I was just adding to the pile. "There's more," she said. "The district attorney's office called this morning. They've officially moved the case to active fraud investigation status. Brent's not just looking at restitution, he's looking at prison time." I nodded slowly. "Good." "Want to hear something else?" she added, raising an eyebrow. I sipped my tea and gave her the go-ahead. One of his emails tried to pitch a story rights deal to a media company. Said he had a true crime divorce saga that could sell. I stared at her. "You're kidding." "Nope. Guess he thought he'd beat the charges and turn this into a Netflix pitch." I couldn't help but laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so delusional. He'd spent months building this fantasy where I was the villain and he was the genius victim. But real life doesn't run on delusion. It runs on facts, receipts, signatures, digital footprints, and Brent had left his all over the place. That night, I went home feeling a strange kind of peace, the kind that settles in when you know the truth is finally louder than the lies. I lit a candle in the kitchen, brewed some sleepy time tea, and opened my laptop to draft a blog post for the bookstore idea. I still hadn't told many people, but something about planning for my future, grounded me. Then a knock came at the door. Not a hard knock, just enough to startle me. I opened it slowly. A courier stood on the porch holding a large white envelope. Melissa Grant? Yes? You've been served. I blinked, taking the envelope. Thank you, I said, out of habit more than anything. He nodded and disappeared into the night. I closed the door, set the tea down, and tore open the envelope. Inside was a legal notice. Brent Adams, FIV, Melissa Grant, petition to access trust. He was suing me for access to the trust my mother left me, the one clearly, irrevocably protected by the clause in her will. I sat down slowly, heart pounding not with fear, but with rage. Even now, even after being caught, exposed, humiliated, charged, he still thought he could claw his way into my life, into my legacy, but this time he wouldn't find an opening. He'd find a wall, and it was made of every lie he ever told. The next morning, I sat across from Mr. Lawton in his office, the same office where this all started. Same shelves of leather-bound law books, same dusty glass candy jar filled with Werther's originals, same framed photo of his grandkids on the desk. But everything else had changed. I wasn't the grieving, uncertain daughter anymore. I wasn't scared or confused or looking for someone else to lead. I had come for clarity, and to shut Brent down for good. Mr. Lawton flipped through the binder with care, tapping his finger against the section marked spousal clause. The language is ironclad, he said, his voice steady. Your mother made it very clear. If you were married at the time of her death, the estate would be locked in trust. Only after a legal divorce could you access it, and more importantly, it cannot, under any circumstance, be distributed to a spouse or former spouse. I nodded, watching the words as he pointed them out, black and white, no room for gray. No judge would override this? Not unless Brent can prove coercion or mental incompetence on your mother's part, and based on her legal history, clean records, and estate plan reviews, he won't. I let out a slow breath, the kind that releases something you didn't know you'd been holding. Melissa, Mr. Lawton added gently, your mother spent years perfecting this trust. I remember she'd come in with notebooks, questions, sticky notes. She wanted this airtight. She didn't want her love for you to ever become someone else's opportunity. I looked down at the binder again. There it was. My mother, even after death, still shielding me. Blank. That night, back home, I crawled into bed and pulled out an old memory box I hadn't touched since the funeral. It was full of odds and ends, movie ticket stubs, faded photos, handwritten recipes. But tucked in the back was a small note card in her handwriting. It's not about money. It's about making sure you're safe when I'm gone. I remembered now. We'd had coffee together on her back porch about a year before she passed. I'd just finished a rough week at the library and had mentioned something about Brent pressuring me to refinance our mortgage. She stirred her coffee slowly, then said, You know what they say about wolves, right? They don't always growl. Sometimes they just ask for signatures. At the time, I brushed it off. Now, I understood. I curled up under the blanket and let the tears come. Not the sharp, angry ones like before, but the soft, grateful kind. The kind that come when you realize someone loved you so much, they planned for things you never even saw coming. She saw him. She protected me from beyond the grave. And I would honor that, not by fighting fire with fire, but by making sure Brent never took another thing from me. The next morning, I called Rachel and told her I was ready to countersue for legal fees. If Brent wanted a war, he'd have to pay for every bullet he wasted. By noon, I'd filed a motion to dismiss his petition. By 3, I'd reopened my bookstore planning folder. Logo mock-ups, location scouting. A list of children's books my mom used to read to me, already typed up for the inventory. I was reclaiming my future, piece by piece. And then, just as I was getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed. Brent. Again. A single text message. You'll regret this. No punctuation, no explanation. I stared at it for a long time, not because I was scared, but because it confirmed everything I already knew. He wasn't finished. He couldn't accept that the door was closed, locked, bolted, sealed with legal steel and my mother's wisdom. He couldn't stand that I was winning, not just in court, but in spirit. I didn't reply. I just blocked the number. Then I turned off the light and whispered into the dark. I don't regret a thing. It was a Thursday morning, overcast and quiet, the kind of day that settles into your bones. I had just pulled into the library parking lot, my usual coffee in hand, keys in my other. I was running over the day's to-do list in my head, program flyers, overdue notices, restocking the early readers section, when I saw him, Brent, leaning against the hood of my car. He looked rough, hoodie pulled up, jaw unshaven, eyes swollen like he hadn't slept in days. I froze, heart thudding. He hadn't contacted me since the threatening text. I thought we were past this. I thought the message was clear. Apparently, he wasn't done. I clenched my keys, switched my phone to record mode, and stepped out of the car with the calmest face I could muster. What are you doing here, Brent? I needed to talk. His voice cracked, and he stepped toward me. I took a step back. This is my workplace. You need to leave. He shook his head. You don't understand. I've been spiraling. I've got nothing left. I lost my job, my house, my reputation. You've taken everything, Mel. No, I said flatly. You lost those things all on your own. He looked up and something flickered in his expression. That old spark of manipulation, wearing a new mask. I'm not okay, he said, louder now. I've been thinking some really dark things I wouldn't normally think. If you just came back, if you'd talk to me, maybe I could get better. Maybe I wouldn't want to. He trailed off, but I knew what he was implying. I knew exactly what this was. A performance. A guilt trap. Another desperate bid to pull me back into his web. Only this time, he was weaponizing pity. I don't want to live like this, he muttered, rubbing his face. Maybe I don't want to live at all. I didn't flinch. I didn't rush toward him. I didn't let the fear in. Instead, I held my phone tighter. Brent, if you're seriously in danger of hurting yourself, you need to speak to a therapist, not your ex-wife in a parking lot. He blinked. That's cold. No, it's a boundary. And boundaries are what happen when you ignore every chance to do better. His expression twisted, and for a second I saw it. The mask slipping, the rage underneath the sadness, the same Brent who used to guilt-trip me into apologies for things I didn't do. The same Brent who'd disappear for hours and reappear with empty explanations and a smug smile. He hadn't changed. He was just desperate now. You don't care what happens to me, he hissed. You never did. I cared for years, I said, even when you didn't deserve it. He lunged a little closer then, just enough to make my heart stutter. That was it. I hit call on my phone and raised it to my ear. Des Moines PD, what's your emergency? Yes, I said calmly. I'd like to report a man harassing me outside my workplace. I've asked him to leave. He's made threats. I feel unsafe. Brent's face went pale. He backed up quickly, hands in the air like I had pulled a gun instead of a phone. I didn't touch her, he shouted to no one, already in retreat. She's lying! She's twisting everything! A few minutes later, 2 squad cars pulled into the lot. I handed them the phone, the recording, the restraining order paperwork already prepped by my attorney but not yet filed. They listened. They watched the footage. And then they approached Brent. The scene was quiet. No shouting, no struggle. Just him, standing there, defeated, as they placed him in cuffs, pending investigation for harassment and intimidation. He didn't even look at me as they walked him to the car, and I didn't look away. I filed the official restraining order that afternoon. It wasn't about fear. It was about finality. It was about saying, once and for all, you don't get to cross this line again. Back at home that evening, I sat with a warm cup of tea, staring at the ink on the court-stamped paperwork. It felt like armor. It felt like peace. And somewhere deep in my chest, where panic used to live, there was now only calm. Courtroom 3 smelled like old wood and cheap coffee. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the air felt too cold, like justice required refrigeration. I sat at the petitioner's table, dressed in quiet confidence. Black blazer, soft blue blouse, hair pinned up. Rachel, my attorney, whispered something encouraging, but I barely heard her. My focus was locked on the man across the room. Brent looked smaller than I remembered. His once proud shoulders slouched. The tailored suits were gone, replaced by something wrinkled and borrowed. His face was pale, and for the first time, I wondered if he finally understood what he'd lost. The judge entered. Everyone rose. This was it. The end of a chapter that nearly broke me, and the beginning of the life I built without him. Brent's attorney opened with a tired plea. Your Honor, my client acknowledges past mistakes but respectfully requests leniency in the financial division of this marriage. He contributed significantly to the household, emotionally and professionally, and believes he is entitled to. I didn't even flinch, because when it was Rachel's turn, she rose like a storm. Your Honor, the facts are documented in full. Mr. Adams committed financial fraud, forged signatures, and attempted to misappropriate an inheritance protected by a conditional trust. This is not about mistakes. This is about deliberate deception. She handed the judge our folder, thick with bank records, texts, screenshots, and the trust clause, in my mother's perfect cursive, notarized and bulletproof. Brent squirmed in his seat. His lawyer looked like he wanted to melt into the carpet. The judge took her time, reviewed the documents, asked a few clarifying questions, and then, like the sound of a gavel on the soul, she spoke. Divorce granted. All community property has been settled. Due to proven financial misconduct, Mr. Adams forfeits claim to any shared assets. She looked up at Brent. You are hereby ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $94,000 to Mrs. Grant. A 5-year restraining order will also be issued, effective immediately. Brent opened his mouth. No sound came out. His lawyer tried to interject. The judge didn't flinch. This case is closed. When I stood, my hands didn't shake. I didn't glance back at Brent, not even once. I walked out of that courtroom taller than I'd ever stood while married to him. Because this wasn't just a legal win. It was the kind of victory no one could take from me. Not the courts, not the banks, not the whispering mouths at Brent's family barbecue. I was free. Free from the lies, the gaslighting, the second-guessing, the weight of loving someone who only loved what I could offer. Outside the courthouse, Erin was waiting with a hug and 2 coffees. I knew you'd win, she said, handing me the cup labeled Queen. Thanks, I smiled. But it's not just a win, it's a clean slate. That night, I logged into my bank account and transferred $50,000 to the Iowa Women's Legal Defense Fund. In the notes section, I typed, "For the women who can't afford to fight back, yet, in honor of Lydia Grant. She always saw the storm coming." I hit send and felt something inside me lift. Grief and justice, sadness and pride. The quiet echo of my mother's voice, somewhere between the walls of the past and the pages of the trust she wrote to save me. I didn't throw a party. I didn't buy anything extravagant. I just lit a candle, opened a book, and made dinner in silence. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop, because it already had. and I didn't have to pick it up anymore. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be living in a little yellow house on a quiet street in West Des Moines, alone, peaceful, genuinely happy, I would have smiled politely and said, maybe someday. But I would have never believed it. Because back then, I couldn't imagine a future that wasn't tied to Brent's moods, his demands, or the weight of trying to keep everything from falling apart. Now, the only thing falling were the golden leaves from the maple trees outside my front porch. Slow, unbothered, beautiful. I bought the house with a portion of the inheritance after the divorce was finalized. Modest, 2-bedroom, wraparound porch. Nothing flashy, but it had charm and history, and best of all, it was mine. I painted the walls soft blue, hung up old pictures of Mom, and filled the rooms with secondhand furniture and plants I never had room for before. Every corner felt like a quiet celebration of survival. And in the heart of downtown, I finally opened the dream I had buried for years, Lydia's Pages. A children's bookstore and reading room, named after my mother, the woman who once read to me every night before bed, even when she was tired from 2 shifts at the hospital. The woman who made sure I knew the power of stories long before I understood the world. I stocked the shelves with the books she used to love. Charlotte's Web, Harriet the Spy, Anne of Green Gables. Every week, I hosted story hour in the back reading room. Local kids curled up on beanbags while I read aloud, voices rising and falling just like she used to do. Sometimes, I could almost feel her standing behind me, smiling, nodding, proud. On Tuesdays, I volunteered at the public library, the same one where I used to shelve books just to pay rent. Only now, I chose to be there. No deadlines, no pressure. Just me and the quiet rustle of pages and the warm nods from the staff who now called me by name. Healing doesn't always look like fireworks. Sometimes it looks like a woman standing in the sun with coffee in one hand and keys in the other, deciding for the first time where she wants to go. And one day, I did just that. I packed a suitcase, fueled up the car, and drove west. Solo. It had always been a bucket list dream. To see Oregon's coast. Brent never wanted to take the trip. Said it was too boring. That the ocean was just a big puddle. But I'd always imagined standing on those cliffs, waves crashing, sky wide open, nothing and no one weighing me down. I drove for 2 days, stopping in small towns, eating alone without shame, no texts to answer, no one to appease. And when I finally reached Cannon Beach, standing barefoot in the cold sand as the wind tangled my hair, I cried, not out of sadness, but because I had made it, alone and whole. Checka. When I got home a week later, the mailbox was overflowing with flyers, coupons, and a single envelope with no return address, handwritten, slanted cursive, Iowa postmark. I sat down on the porch steps, heart pacing a little faster than it should, and opened it. Inside was a short letter. Hi, Melissa. You don't know me, but I've been dating Brent for a few months. I didn't believe everything he said about you, but I also didn't believe you were the villain he made you out to be. Last week, I found court documents. The truth. I'm sorry for bothering you, but I thought you deserved to know. He's still telling people you ruined him, and he still thinks he can win you back. I'm gone now. You're not the only one he fooled. Haley. I folded the letter and sat with it in my lap, staring out at the quiet neighborhood as a cardinal landed on the railing. He was still lying, still circling, but it didn't matter, because I wasn't afraid anymore. I got up, walked inside, and placed the letter in a folder labeled Past. Then I brewed a fresh pot of tea, opened the shop early, and welcomed a little girl and her mother into the reading room. The girl picked out a worn copy of Matilda and asked me to read it in a British accent. I smiled. Only if you promise to do Miss Trunchbull's voice when it's your turn. She giggled and nodded, already curling into a beanbag. This was the life I never thought I'd have, and it was better than anything I could have imagined. I wasn't sure why I said yes to meeting her. Haley. The woman who had unknowingly stepped into the same web I'd spent years untangling myself from. Her letter had been respectful, honest, no drama, no blame, just a warning and an offer to talk, woman to woman. Something in her tone had felt familiar, like the voice I once had before I learned to second-guess it. So here we were. A small cafe tucked between a hardware store and an insurance office in West Des Moines. Rain tapped gently against the windows as Haley stirred her coffee with a shaky spoon. She looked young, not in age necessarily, but in energy. Hopeful, apologetic, like someone still trying to sort out where she went wrong and how deep she'd fallen. "I really appreciate you meeting me," she said, glancing at me, then back down. I nodded. "You didn't owe me anything." She let out a breath. "He made you out to be heartless, like you blindsided him, took everything, said you used the courts to destroy him." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "And you believed him?" She flinched, then nodded. "At first, yeah. He was charming. Funny. Told me he'd lost everything in the divorce and was trying to rebuild. I felt bad for him." "Of course you did," I said gently. "That's what he counts on." She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, already queued to a text thread. She slid it across the table. "I thought you might want to see this. It's what changed things for me." I scrolled through message after message from Brent. "She manipulated the court. That trust should have been ours. She lied about it. Once my appeal goes through, she won't have anything left. She still loves me. She's just angry." My hands didn't shake. Not this time. Because these weren't bombs anymore. They were recycled plays from a man who never learned a new script. "He told me the judge got it wrong," Haley continued, voice trembling. "Said he was the victim of a broken system. But then I found the court records, the fraud charges, the trust clause, the restitution order. It didn't take much to figure out the real story." I handed her back the phone. "I'm glad you did." She looked up at me, and there was something raw and honest in her eyes. "I left him 2 weeks ago, blocked him, changed my number. But he still finds ways to message me." I gave a small, sad smile. "You're not the first." Haley hesitated, then leaned forward. "I wanted to tell you something he said before I left." I tilted my head, curious. "He said he still thinks you'll forgive him, that when all the dust settles, you'll see he was just scared, and that you'll take him back." I blinked, then laughed. Not bitter, not angry, just amazed. "He really said that?" She nodded, dead serious, like it was inevitable. I sat back in my chair, arms crossed, heart calm. "I used to think I could fix him," I said. "That if I just gave more, loved harder, forgave faster, he'd finally show up as the man I believed he was. But now, I don't need him to change. I just need him gone." Haley smiled then, a slow, knowing smile. "Good, because you deserve way better than that delusional man-child." We both laughed. For a moment, it wasn't awkward or heavy. Just two women who had survived the same storm, sitting in the calm that followed. When we stood to leave, I offered her my number. "Just in case," I said. "He has a way of circling back." "I know," she said, pocketing it. "But I'm done. I just thought you should know. He's still trying, still rewriting the story." I shrugged. "Let him. I'm not reading it anymore." She opened the cafe door, letting in a gust of cool air. "Melissa?" she called over her shoulder as I pulled on my coat. "Yeah? You might want to block him again. He still thinks there's a crack in the door." I smiled. "There's not." Later that night, I pulled up Brent's number, long since deleted, but somehow still lingering in old threads and hidden corners of my phone. Block. Done. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, lit a lavender candle, and opened a new book I'd been meaning to start for weeks, because the only story I cared about now was mine. The sun was sinking behind the neighbors' trees, spilling gold across my little garden like a quiet apology for all the storms I'd weathered. The air smelled like lavender and damp soil. Birds chirped lazily as if they had nothing urgent left to sing. I sat on the porch swing, wrapped in a soft cardigan, a cup of chamomile tea warming my hands. Inside, behind me, on a floating shelf above my reading nook, sat a simple black frame. Not flashy, not bold, just her handwriting, her will, her final protection. And under that, the letter I'd once opened with shaking hands. Melissa, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. Please trust Mr. Lawton. Everything I did for you. Love, Mom. I used to think it was just a sweet sentiment. But now I knew better. It was a plan. It was a sword disguised as a love letter. And it was the last move in a long game she played to protect the daughter she knew would love too hard, trust too quickly, and forgive too often. Chapter. I thought about everything that had happened since she passed. The lies Brent tried to bury me under. The truth clawing its way to the surface. The woman I became when I stopped trying to save someone who didn't want to be saved. I thought about the nights I cried until I couldn't breathe. And the mornings I woke up stronger than I expected. And somehow all of it led me here. To peace. To freedom. To me. I was dating again. Slowly. No big declarations, no illusions. Just long walks, shared books, and laughter that didn't come with conditions. His name was Daniel. He ran the indie coffee shop 2 blocks from the bookstore. The first time we talked, he asked about my favorite banned book and laughed when I said the Lorax. I speak for the trees, I'd said, and the women who finally found their voices. He got it. But most importantly, he never made me feel like I had to shrink to be loved. And that was new. Chapter. The store was thriving. Lydia's Pages had become a neighborhood gem, the kind of place where kids dragged their parents and adults lingered in the reading corner longer than they planned. I'd just launched a book club, just like Mom used to host when I was a kid. We met once a month on Thursday nights, over wine and poetry and old classics. We shared stories, real ones, sometimes messy, sometimes hard, but always ours. We laughed a lot, cried too, but mostly we healed together. Because that's what stories do. The good ones, anyway. They remind us we're not alone. Sometimes when I lock up the store at night and walk home under the string lights in the alley, I feel her, not as a ghost or a shadow, but as warmth in my chest, as if she left behind more than money or a will. She left behind a blueprint of how to protect yourself when love becomes a weapon, of how to stand firm when the wind changes, of how to write your own ending when someone tries to hijack your story. Sitting there in the garden, I took a sip of tea and smiled as a butterfly landed on the edge of the porch. A breeze brushed against my cheek, soft and warm. And in that moment, I could almost hear her voice, calm, steady. Sometimes love isn't loud. Sometimes it hides in the fine print of a will. I looked out over the yard. The flower beds in full bloom, the lights twinkling along the fence, the life I'd built from the rubble. I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't need revenge or apologies. I had something better. I had peace. As the sun dipped below the trees, I whispered, soft but certain, "You were right, Mom. He wasn't worthy of me, but I am." And I meant it. Every word.